What would you do if your child came home every day with a piece of their spirit chipped away by cruel words and deliberate exclusion? For one mother, the answer wasn't just consolation, it was creation. In the next few minutes, you'll witness how a simple notebook filled with messages of hope for a bullied daughter evolved into a literary phenomenon that has schools changing their approach to disability awareness. Stay with me to discover the 3 unexpected turning points that transformed their private pain into a public movement. The lunchroom fell silent as Emma entered, the squeaking of her leg braces echoing against the sudden hush. Heads turned and whispers began, a familiar chorus that accompanied her daily trek between the tables. At 12 years old, Emma had mastered the art of keeping her eyes fixed straight ahead, pretending not to notice how conversations died when she approached, or how empty seats mysteriously became saved as she searched for a place to sit. Emma's cerebral palsy affected primarily the left side of her body, giving her a distinctive gait that became the favorite target of mockery among a group of 7th-grade girls. The cruelty was meticulously calculated. Notes appeared in her locker with crude stick-figure drawings of a limping girl with the caption SPAZ. Birthday party invitations extended to everyone in her class somehow never reached her hands. The teachers rarely caught the whispered taunts or the exaggerated limping performances that happened just out of their line of sight. She used to skip to the bus stop, Emma's mother confided to the school counselor during their 3rd meeting that semester. Now she checks the weather forecast, hoping for rain so she can stay inside during recess. The changes had been subtle at first. Homework returned with suspicious water stains. Requests to stay home with vague complaints of not feeling well. Emma's once vibrant personality had dimmed like a bulb losing power, the spark in her eyes fading with each passing week. Soon the emotional pain manifested physically. Emma developed mysterious stomach aches every Monday morning. Nightmares began to disrupt her sleep, leaving dark circles under her eyes. She abandoned her beloved community theatre group with the excuse of needing more time for schoolwork, though her grades were starting to slip for the first time. Research paints a grim picture of what Emma experienced. Children with visible disabilities face bullying at rates nearly 3 times higher than their peers without disabilities. More disturbing still, these children often endure this torment for months or even years before adults recognize the pattern. The invisibility of their suffering compounds the isolation they already feel. For Emma, the breaking point arrived during an oral presentation on marine biology. Standing before the class, she'd carefully arranged her poster board and note cards, her passion for ocean conservation momentarily overcoming her growing social anxiety. As she described the threats facing coral reefs, a movement caught her eye. 3 boys at the back of the room were exaggerating her walking pattern, their faces contorted in mock concentration. A ripple of laughter spread through the classroom. The teacher, focused on Emma's presentation, missed the pantomime entirely. Emma's voice faltered, then broke. Tears came before she could stop them, and the presentation she'd worked on for weeks ended with her rushing from the room. That evening, curled against her mother's shoulder, Emma finally unleashed the pain she'd been carrying. "Why did God make me this way if it just makes everyone hate me?" she sobbed. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just want to be normal." Her mother, Catherine, held her daughter tightly, feeling a mixture of heartbreak and fury pulse through her body. A technical writer by profession, Catherine had always found clarity through words. That night, after Emma had cried herself to sleep, Catherine opened a notebook and began to write. Not the procedural documentation she produced by day, but raw, honest messages of strength and beauty specifically for her daughter. What made Emma a target wasn't simply her physical difference, but paradoxically, the qualities that made her extraordinary: her unflinching intelligence, her refusal to dim her enthusiasm for the things she loved, her determination to participate fully despite the obstacles. The bullies sensed her strength and sought to break it, recognizing in her the authenticity they lacked in themselves. While Emma slept that night, her mother's pen moved across paper with urgency, capturing words meant only for her daughter's eyes. But what starts as a private expression of love sometimes finds its way into the world in unexpected ways. The lined notebook Catherine filled with raw emotion and fierce determination would soon travel far beyond the walls of their home, though neither of them could have imagined the journey ahead. The transformation began on a Tuesday morning when Emma brought the notebook to school, drawing comfort from her mother's words during difficult moments. Miss Pearson, Emma's English teacher, noticed her reading it between classes, the worn cover already showing signs of frequent handling. When Emma hesitantly allowed her to read a few pages, the teacher's eyes filled with tears. "This isn't just for Emma," Miss Pearson told Catherine during a hastily arranged meeting after school. "These words could change how our entire community sees disability and bullying. Have you considered publishing this?" The suggestion seemed almost absurd at first. Catherine had spent her career writing technical manuals and corporate documentation, not pouring her heart onto pages for public consumption. Yet something about Miss Pearson's certainty planted a seed. Over the next month, Catherine and Emma worked together, reshaping the raw material into something that might reach beyond their private pain, while maintaining its authenticity. Each rejection letter felt like another door closing on Emma's story, Catherine later recalled of the publishing process. 17 publishers declined the manuscript, their responses variations on the same theme. While powerful, we're uncertain of the market for such direct treatment of disability and bullying. One editor suggested softening the language around the bully's actions. Another recommended removing passages describing Emma's most vulnerable moments. "But those are the parts that feel most true," Emma insisted, her voice stronger than Catherine had heard in months. As the rejection letters accumulated, Emma's situation at school deteriorated further. The administration had implemented basic accommodations, allowing her extra time between classes and assigning a note-taker during days when her muscle fatigue made writing difficult. These modest adjustments provoked outrage from several parents who complained about special treatment and unfair advantages. During this bleak period, Catherine discovered Lighthouse Press, a small publishing house in Minneapolis. Its founder, Diane Reynolds, had grown up with a brother who had cerebral palsy. When the manuscript arrived on her desk, she recognized immediately what the larger publishers had missed. "Some stories aren't just stories," Diane told them during their first phone call. "Some are lifelines disguised as books." The initial print run was modest, just 3,000 copies with simple cover art, featuring a single red notebook against a white background. Catherine and Emma's expectations were equally modest, hoping perhaps to reach other families facing similar challenges in their community. Then the letters began arriving, first a trickle, then dozens each week. Children wrote about classmates with disabilities they had previously ignored or misunderstood. Parents described tearful conversations with their kids about inclusion. Teachers reported using the book to transform classroom dynamics. "I never knew what it felt like to be different until I read your book," wrote a 10-year-old from Arizona. "Now I sit with James at lunch even though my friends think it's weird." The turning point came when a producer for Morning Light, a popular daytime talk show, discovered the book through her daughter's school reading program. The segment featuring Emma and Catherine lasted barely 7 minutes, but by that evening the remaining inventory had sold out. Social media erupted with the hashtag #IStandWithEmma, trending nationally as people shared their own experiences with bullying and disability. For Catherine, the most profound realization came not from the book's commercial success, but from watching Emma gradually reclaim her confidence. The mother understood that without intervention, her daughter might have internalized the cruel message that she deserved the treatment she received, a falsehood Catherine couldn't bear to let take root. Beyond the falsehood that had been uprooted from Emma's mind lay a transformation more remarkable than bestseller lists or talk show appearances. The hallways where she once walked with hunched shoulders trying to make herself invisible gradually became the staging ground for something no one, especially those who had tormented her, could have anticipated. The girl who once ate lunch alone was about to discover that her greatest vulnerability would become her most unexpected strength. As Perfectly Different gained national attention, the atmosphere at Westridge Middle School shifted imperceptibly at first, then dramatically. Teachers incorporated the book into their curriculum, not as required reading, but as a centerpiece for discussions about empathy. Emma noticed the strange sensation of walking into classrooms where students had just finished chapters detailing events they had witnessed or participated in mere months earlier. "It was surreal," Emma would later explain during a university lecture on disability advocacy. "Suddenly my story wasn't just mine anymore, it belonged to everyone, including the people who had caused it." Not everyone embraced this new narrative. Parents of 3 students thinly disguised in the book as Trevor, Jackson, and Sophia threatened legal action against the publisher, claiming defamation despite the use of pseudonyms. 2 families demanded meetings with the principal, insisting their children were being unfairly targeted for normal teenage behavior. The school board received a petition from several parents demanding the book be removed from classroom discussions, claiming it created a hostile learning environment for their children. For Emma, the newfound attention created complex challenges. The same week she appeared on a regional public radio program, she found navigating the school cafeteria still required courage. "People treat me like 2 different people," she confided to her counselor. "There's Book Emma, who everyone admires, and Real Emma, who some kids still whisper about." The ripple effects extended far beyond their community. Within 18 months of publication, over 400 schools across 27 states had incorporated Perfectly Different into their anti-bullying initiatives. A study from Northwestern University tracked implementation in 32 schools, documenting a 41% decrease in reported disability-related bullying incidents and a 27% increase in intervention by student bystanders when compared to control schools. What resonated most powerfully wasn't just Emma's experience with disability, but the book's central message that differences, whether visible or invisible, aren't deficiencies. Letters poured in from children with autism, ADHD, anxiety disorders, and physical differences who found their own experiences reflected in Emma's story. Perhaps most remarkable was what happened with Emma's former tormentors. Initially, they avoided her entirely, embarrassed by their portrayal. But as months passed, 4 of them approached her privately. Their conversations revealed painful truths that Emma hadn't considered. One lived with an alcoholic father whose verbal abuse had taught a vocabulary of cruelty. Another admitted feeling invisible at home and powerful only when making others feel small. "I'm not saying it excuses what they did," Emma later explained during a TED-Ed student talk that accumulated over 2 million views online. "But understanding why people hurt others sometimes helps you stop letting their actions define you." Emma's transformation from victim to advocate evolved gradually. Her first presentation without her mother was at a neighboring elementary school, where she abandoned the prepared script halfway through. Instead, she asked children to share what made them feel different, creating a spontaneous circle of vulnerability that school counselors called more effective than any formal program we've implemented. By 9th grade, Emma had founded Common Ground, an inclusion organization that ensured no student ate lunch alone. 3 of her former bullies became active members, with one eventually co-presenting with Emma at a statewide education conference on peer intervention strategies. The ripples of Emma's story continue to expand beyond what anyone could have imagined. Today, Catherine and Emma run workshops for families caught in similar storms, emphasizing practical actions that break the cycle of isolation. "Document every incident," Catherine tells parents in church basements and community centers across the country. "Find at least one ally within the school who sees your child's full humanity." Emma, now approaching college applications with her sights set on disability rights law, speaks with a quiet authority that commands attention in ways her younger self could never have imagined. At a recent conference, she shared what she considers her most important insight. "When we hide our pain, we protect our bullies. But when we speak it aloud, we create space for others to recognize themselves in our story. Perhaps most powerful is the unexpected alliance that has formed between Emma and Jordan, once her most persistent tormentor. After joining Common Ground in 10th grade, Jordan now co-facilitates presentations with Emma, their shared history transforming into a testament to human capacity for growth. "We're not just changing school policies," Emma explains. "We're changing the narrative about what's possible when we refuse to be defined by our worst experiences."